Good evening. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Sanhedrin Daf Kuf Hey, and we are 7 lines down at the beginning of a new pasuk, a pasuk from Yirmiyah. The pasuk says, "Madua shovev ha'am hazeh Yerushalayim meshuva nitzchis." The Gemara says that the Jewish people always seem to have a retort when the Navi would give them musar. The Gemara is going to give an example. Amar Rav, he says, "Tshuva nitzchis heshiva knesses Yisrael Navi." A great answer. They gave a retort back to the Navi. Amar Navi Yisrael. The Navi says to the Jewish people at the times of Yirmiyahu, "Hizru b'tshuva." It's time for you to do tshuva. What did they say? Avosechem shechatu hechanim. The Navi said, "Excuse me, your forefathers, they did averos. Where did they end up?" So what did the wayward Jews say back to the Navi? Amru lahen. They said back to the Nevi'im, "U nevi'echem shalochatu hechanim." The Nevi'im, your ancestors who were tzaddikim and amazing, they're also in the grave. Right? Everybody dies. Now you're going to tell me I have to do tshuva? Your ancestors had the same demise as my ancestors, relevant to whether or not I'm a Rasha. Now, where do we see that this was the dialogue? Shneamar, from a pasuk in Zechariah. The pasuk says, "Avosechem ayehem," where are your forefathers? Vanavim al olam yichyu. Do Nevi'im always live forever? Okay, so Amar Lahen, what did he say to them? Chizru v'hodu. There, your forefathers, they were moded. They made a difference because they admitted their mistakes. They did tshuva. Shneimar, ach divari v'chuki asher tzivisi es avdi hanavim. And really, the rest of that pasuk says vayashuvu. The rest of that pasuk says that they did tshuva. So, of course, you're right. Everybody dies, but you don't want to die a rasha. You want to try and die a tzaddik. That's probably the way to go if you have to pick one. So there's a big difference. Shmuel has another approach. Shmuel Amar, Bo Asara B'nei Adam v'yashvu lefanav. 10 people came and sat in front of Yechezkel. Amar Lahen, he said to the 10, Chizru b'tshuva, go do tshuva. Amrulo, they said, Evet shamachru rabo v'isha shagar shabayla. If you have a master who sells his evet, or if you have a woman who divorces, or a woman who is divorced by her husband, klum yesh lazeh al zeh klum. You're done. Once the divorce happens, once the papers are signed, she's no longer your wife. Take a look at a very painful Rashi. Rashi, 12 lines down, give or take, to Brahmaschel Evet Shemachru, Umeachar Shemacharnu HaKadosh Baruch Hu Nebuchadnezzar, V'garashnu Me'elav, Yesh lo Allah Aleinu Klum. Does the Kadosh Baruch Hu have any tainas against us at all? We don't have to listen to you anymore. You sold us down the river. We're done. An unbelievable taina. That says the Gemara, Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Navi lechem or lahen. The Navi, he says to the Navi, go back to the people, and back to the people and tell them the following. Pasuk in Yeshaya. Eize sefer krisos imochem asher shelachtia. Is there a divorce document between us? Mi manushi asher macharti eschemlo. Is there any relationship that I have forgotten about that I sold you to somebody else? Hein ba'avonosechem nimkartem. You were sold because of your actions, not because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, not because of mine. This isn't because of me. It's only going to be because of the chatayim of the Jewish people. So stop throwing this card at HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The reason we find ourselves in galus is because of us. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want us to be in galus. These onshim are in a very complex way. They are for us. This explains the complexity that Reish Lakish had raised. My dechsiv, one pasuk says David Abdi, which is a phrase that we can appreciate. However, in Yirmiyahu Mem Gimel it says Nebuchadnezzar Abdi. Wow, but I think that we are better than Nebuchadnezzar. Are we better than Nebuchadnezzar? I think so. We don't have a baskol coming out of Shemaim calling us the Eved, calling us Avdi. It says the Gemara. Reish Lakish explains. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knew that the Jewish people were going to claim that you gave me over to Nebuchadnezzar. Well, that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu called Nebuchadnezzar an Eved. Eved shekana nechasim. Eved lemi, nechasim lemi. If Eved, the Eved, Nebuchadnezzar, he captures something, a people, but Nebuchadnezzar is an Eved, so that which belonged to Nebuchadnezzar the Eved, and Nebuchadnezzar is also an Eved, everything belongs to the Eibishter. So Reish Lakish highlights that the reason why the pasuk referred to Nebuchadnezzar as Nebuchadnezzar Avdi was so that when there would be a day down the road that the Jews would say, we don't work for you anymore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because you gave us a Nebuchadnezzar. HaKadosh Baruch Hu orchestrated it that we would know that we were all a part of him. The pasuk says, "Ve'ol al ruchachem haya lo siyeh." Asher tem omrim nihye kegoyim kemishpachos haratzos l'sharis eitz ve'even. We're going to be like the nations of the world that they serve inanimate objects. Chai ani ne'um Hashem Elokim. Hashem says again a lashon shavua. Absolutely not. Im lo biyad chazako b'zor natuya uv'chem hashvucha emloch aleim. I already took care of you. I took you out with a yad chazaka, with a zor natuya. I poured my wrath out on you to rule over you. So basically, I made things difficult for you so that you'd still be mine. Yes, it was difficult. 100% things are difficult. But I did that so that you'd know that I'm here for you. Amar Rav Nachman, kol ki hai rischa, lirtach rachmona alan v'lifrokinan. We should take this anger of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, chas v'shalom, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should show so much anger that we know who the Eibishter is, that we instantly do tshuva, and then, done. Then we would all be lifrukinan. We would all be redeemed. The next pasuk, a little bit more than halfway down. Yisrael kav ches v'yisur l'mishpat elokav yoronu. Amar Rabba Bar Chana Amar lahen Nabi l'Yisrael chizru b'tshuva. The Nabi says to the Jews at that time, go do tshuva. Amru lo, they said, ein anu yecholen yetzer hara sholed banu. This is how our door feels. Our door doesn't usually rebel because of hashkafa issues. We are swept up by the Yetzer Hara. So that's what the Gemara says, is that they said back to the Navi, look, we'd love to, in principle, in philosophy, and in theology, we agree with you. The problem is that we have a big Yetzer Hara. So what do you want from me? I can't be bigger than my Yetzer Hara. Amar Lahen, the Nabi says to them, yes, you should be. Last of the short lines, Yisru Yitzreichem. Give Musar to your Yetzer Hara. Sit down, open a Ramchal, and just knock the daylights out of the Yetzer Hara so that you come back and that you're normal. Amrulo, what did they say? Elokav yoronu. Hashem should talk to the Yetzer Hara. We didn't make the Yetzer Hara. Tell Hashem to tell the Yetzer Hara to calm down a little bit. And this closes out a chapter on the discussion about the three malachim who have no chelik in olam haba, as we've spoken about over the last week or so. Now we're starting the next part of the Gemara, and today we're going to be speaking about Bilam at length, some very well-known Gemaras. Arba hedyotos. There are four people that the Mishnah told us who also wouldn't have a chelik in olam haba. Bilam v'doeg v'achitofel v'gechazi. Bilam below am, a drasha his name. He was really a person without a nation. Or davar acher, Bilam shebala am. Bala from the word balal or bavel, one of the two, depending on how you read the word, which is to mix things up or confuse. That is his name. And Bilam's father's name was Ben Beor. It's Bilam Ben Beor. Ben Beor. Sheba al Beir. He was intimate with Beir on his animal. That's what Rashi says in 8 lines from the bottom inside margins. Beor Sheba al Beir. Sheba al Asono. Kimo behema de metargimina and Beir. In Aramaic, the word Beir is a word that has to do with animals. So that's why Ben Beor Sheba al Beir. Tana, and we have a Tanaic source that actually confirms this. Hu Beor, the father of Bilam was Beor. Hu Kushan Rishasayim, that's another one of his names. Hu Lavan Ha'arami, he was considered to be Lavan. Beor, first of the very long lines on Kuf Heyamad Aleph. Beor Sheba al Beir. He was called Beor because he cohabited with an animal. Kushan Rishasayim Da'abad Shtei Rishayos B'Yisrael. Because this person did 2 terrible things with the Jewish people. Remember Lavan, Achas Bimei Yaakov, the whole story of Yaakov and Lavan, Achas Bimei Shvot HaShoftim, which is our story right now, cohabiting with the animal. Fine. Uma Shemo, and what is his real name? And the Brisa concludes, Lavan Ha'arami Shemo, that Bilam was Lavan. That Beor, was Lavan. The pasuk says, Ksiv ben Beor, Uchsiv beno Beor. So we're like confused a little bit. Is it Bilam ben Beor? Is Bilam the son of Beor? Or Bilam, was it Beno Beor? Right? And his son who was the father? Was Bilam the father? Or was Beor the father? Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Aviv, his father, as it relates to him, as it relates to Bilam, was Beno Hulo Benevius. The son was a greater Navi than the father. They both had Nevuah, but Bilam had a higher level of Nevuah. Still, that's not too shabby. Father-son dynamic where they both have nevuah and they're both goyim.
They're both what?
But that's not, they're both goyim. They're both neviim, excuse me. Yeah, they're both goyim too. That is true also. What I meant to say is that they're both goyim and both have nevuah. That's, yeah. So says the Gemara, and Bilam hu de lo asi la alma de asi. Bilam did not have a portion in the next world, but ha'achrini asu. But other goyim, they do have a portion in the next world. This is actually a machlokas tanaim, and one that we will speak about as carefully as we can. Mas nisan mani. What does the Mishnah say? Rabbi Yeshua Omer. Rabbi Yeshua says in Mas nisan Rabbi Yeshua he. Titania, the Brisa says, we're 4 lines into the wide lines. Rabbi Lazar Omer, the pasuk says, Yashuv Rishayim l'sha'ola, kol goyim shecheche elokim. Yashuv Rishayim l'sha'ola, the Rishayim will go down to the pits, not Olam Haba, not Olam Ha'emes, not the next world. And kol goyim, all the non-Jews who are shecheche elokim, who forget about God. Yashuv Rishayim l'sha'ola, elu poshe Yisrael. That part of the pasuk means who goes down to Sheol? Those are the people who are poshe Yisrael. Those are the Yidden who do things wrong. They will inherit a bad future. Kol goyim shcheche elokim, elu, and the word poshe, according to some of the Meforshim, is not here. Elu ovdei kochavim di Rabbi Eliezer. Namely, without the word poshe, there's no chelik in olam haba for the average goy, for the average ovdei kochavim. Amar lo Rabbi Yeshua, v'chi ne'emar bichol goyim or vichol goyim. It's not really the right way to read the pasuk. It doesn't say that all of them, v'halo lo ne'emar ela kol goyim shcheche elokim, only the ones who forget about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's just, Rabbi Eliezer, you got, your shita has to be tethered in the psukim. You can't just say this. It has to fit. Ela yeshuv rishayim l'she'ola. What does the pasuk mean when it says that the rishayim go to Sheol? Ma'anin hu kol goyim shcheche elokim. That's only talking about the non-Jews who are shcheche elokim, who forget about, who ignore, who decide that Hashem doesn't exist, whatever the case may be. Those are the ones that don't have a chelek in olam haba. V'afos Rasha nosan siman be'atzmo. Even Bilam spoke in these terms about being the goy who might have a olam haba and who might not. How so? Amar, tamos nafshi mos yesharim. If I die the death of a straight, meaning I'm on the straight path. Im tamos nafshi. If I die mos yesharim, a regular, that techrisi kamo, then I'll have an afterlife like the Yidden do, just like them, just like they do. Bim lav, and if I don't have a mos yesharim, and I'm kind of following the path of those who are my own nation, then hineni holech la'ami, then my nation that worships avodah zarah, where do they go? They go to the Sheol. They have a very bad afterlife. The pasuk says 12 lines or so from the bottom. Vayelchu ziknei Moab ziknei Midyan. The elders of Moab and Midyan went together. Tana, Midyan uMoab lo haya lahem shalom e'olam. They were 2 nations that never got along. Mashal l'shnei klavim shayva eder. And the Gemara gives a parable about 2 dogs that were in a herd. V'hayu tzehuvim ze al ze. And they used to fight with each other all the time. Tzehuvim is an interesting word, and it's translated here. Rashi writes this in the outer margin, halfway down. Dibra maschel tzehuvin, ki'usin ki'adam shekois panav tzehuvin. I didn't know that this was a color of anger. A golden face, a yellow face. I would have thought red. I don't know. But that's what the Gemara says, that they were tzehuvin. They were always yellow-faced at each other, and that means that they were not getting along. So the mashal is that these 2 dogs never get along. They fight all the time. However, then all of a sudden a wolf comes to attack one of the dogs. So Amar ha'echad, the other dog says, Im eni ozro hayom, horgo oso, ulamachar ba'alai. If I don't go help him, not only will he die, which maybe I don't care about, but I care, because he'll come kill me. I don't want to die. So therefore, halchu shneim v'hargo hazeiv. In other words, really, Moab and Midyan hated each other. But if your enemy is my enemy, then we have a common enemy that makes us friends. That's what the Gemara says. And Amar Papa Hainu to Amreinshi. That's what people say about the Karkushta, which is a weasel, Vishunra, and a cat. The 2 of them, Avdu Hilula Misraba, they had a huge party, the Bishgada, for the very unfortunate one. Namely, yes, we don't like each other, but we're going to band together to wipe out our common enemy. The pasuk says 8 lines or so from the bottom on Kuf Hey Amud Aleph. V'yeshvu sarei Moavim Bilam, the sarei Midyan the Hechan Azal. Stark diuk in the pasuk. The pasuk in The pasuk in Bamidbar there says that the Sari Moab stayed with Bilam. What happened to the Sari Midjan? So they had a beautiful svara. They knew the Jewish people. They knew the Eibishter. What did they say? Keivan de Amar lahu linu fo halayla vashivosi eschem davar. When Bilam said, I'm going to go to sleep at night and see what Hashem says about whether or not I can attack the Jewish people. Amru, what did the Sari Midjan say? Klum yesh av shesone es beno. What do you think the answer is going to be? You're going to wake up in the morning, the Eibishter all of a sudden is going to give you a nevuah overnight that says, yeah, just go kill my children. No, that's not possible. The Sari Midjan understood. Klum yesh av shesone es beno. How could there ever be such a case? Amar Rav Nachman chutzpah, when it comes to being disrespectful, afilu klape shmaya mahani. Even being disrespectful with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, very helpful. Where do we see this? Because in regards to Bilam, originally when he inquired, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, don't go. He kept pushing, kum lech itam. Yeah, go ahead with them. So we can see that there's a certain tenacity, a certain pushing, a certain chutzpah that, again, you got to do it the right way. Even when you're being a mechutzah, there's a way to do things, but the pushing is stark and it can be very helpful. Similarly, Amar Rav Sheshes, chutzpah, a person who's chutzpahdik, he is malchusa below tagahi. He is a king, but without a crown. Meaning he'll get a lot done. He keeps pushing. He'll get a lot done. Dechsiv anuchi hayom rachu mashuach melech v'ha'anoshim ha'ele ben tzuruya kashim mimeni. So this was talking about David, and the other people were more chutzpahdik than he was. All right, on to some of the details about Bilam. Says the Gemara, 5 lines from the bottom. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Bilam chiger beraglo achasi. He was limping. He had one bad leg. How do we know? Shneemar vayelech shefi. He was limping. So usually when you say someone's limping, it's a reference to one of their legs. Shimshon b'shtei raglav. But Shimshon, he actually had a problem with both of his legs. Shneemar shfifon alai orach hanoshech ikve sus. And the word shfifon is a double. Bilam suma ba'achas me'enav haya. Bilam, he was blind in one eye. Do we have a rule that a Navi is not allowed to be a Balmum? Is that only by a Kohen? I don't know why I'm thinking that. Does that sound familiar? No?
I've only heard
There is a
so-
concept where you're supposed to be a chacham, gibor, aksher. I don't know if you're quite a gibor.
I don't know. I know I might just be blurring areas of halacha. It just could be, but I'm just super familiar with it from our discussions about Kohanim over the last many years. Anyways, it might be different by a goy no matter what, because the whole thing was given.
Right, just-
It might have been, yeah, it might have just been an undeserved gift. I mean, certainly undeserved in certain ways. It's not exactly a righteous person.
Some possible what kind of person could become a number, but no, halacha. I mean, his halacha could be modified.
But that was more about his intellectual prowess and his, yeah, that makes sense. So he was blind in one eye. Shneimar sisum ha'ayin. Ha'ayin is in the singular. So that shows us that is the case. Kosem ba'amaso haya. This was a Gemara we saw earlier as well, that there were some type of magical things that were taking place. Ba'amaso with his Aver Tashmish. Ksiv hacha, where do we see this? Nofel gluyanaim, uksiv hasam by Esther v'nei Haman nofel al hamita. So the language of nofel by these two people, Haman was he fell on Esther's bed, and we therefore assume that there was something intimate, some intimate aspect of that, and the same is true by Bilam nofel v'gluyanaim. Itmar marzutra amar kosem ba'amaso. As some say, yes, that is in fact the case, that there was something magical taking place here, something unique. And Mar Braid Ravina Amar Sheba al Asono, like we saw earlier, that no, that pasuk means that he was Ba al Asono. Now, what are the Mar Makomos to support each of these? The first we already saw, the two psukim, one from Bamidbar and one from Esther. Mantamar Kosim Ba'amaso Haya Kida Amran. Those are the two psukim of Nofel Gluya Naim, Haman Nofel, V'hinei Haman Nofel al Hamita. Umanda Amar Ba al Asono Haya, the one who says that Bilam was cohabiting with his animal, Ksifacha, Karashachav, Uchsivasa, Bein Ragleha, Kara Nafal Shacha, by the story of Yael and Sisra. So there we see that she was taka intimate, and these are fascinating shilas about her having agreed to cohabit with him in order to kill him. Like Ad Hechan, how do you have to be like a Talmud Chacham Atzamu Muflag to make decisions like that. She knew the halacha, Tamuvan, she knew the halacha, and she killed Sisra, but she had to sleep with him. So these are big shilots. But anyways, we're using her pasuk where it says kara, bein ragla kara nafal shachav, and that's linking back to our pasuk of kara shachav by Bilam. So that's how we learned that he was with his animal. When he was with his animal, kara shachav, there the words kara are found by her and shachav as well. The Yodea Das Elyon, the pasuk says that he had knowledge of all the greats, and this is one of my favorite lines in Shas. Hashta das behemto lo havayoda, das Elyon havayoda. He's talking to his donkey. He didn't even know what the donkey was talking about. You're telling me that he knows the Eibishter. Even in learning Torah, we could understand an unfathomably small amount of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Unfathomably small. If we're waiting to understand a Kodesh Baruch Hu fully to start keeping the halacha, we're in big trouble. That's not our job. Our job is to keep halacha. My das behemto. What does this mean, das behemto? Oh, so let's get into the story of this behema and what kind of das he had.
This almond is like.
Yeah. Oh, really? Wow. Okay. I've never looked in your Gemara. I should see. Yeah. So says the Gemara, the Amrele, my time rachav tsusya. They said to him, Bilam, get a horse. It's a nicer animal. They're strong. They're great. Amar luhu, shadoi luhu birativa. I sent it out to the watery places. I sent it out to go graze and to go eat in the marsh, wherever he was sending it out to. Donkey's like, yo, I'm right here. Amrale, halo anochi asoncha. What do you mean that it's just because you sent out the horse over? You use me all the time. Oh, no, you, the donkey, you're just Lata'ina Ba'alma. You're just to carry some packages. And she says back, Asher Rachavta Alai. This Shteit in Chumash, says the donkey. What are you talking about? No, Akroi Ba'alma, I only use you sparingly, but really the horse is my regular animal. The donkey kicks back again. Me'odcha ad hayom hazeh. From the time that you found me until today. V'lo'od elashe ani osa lach ma'aseh ishus balayla. The donkey says, we cohabit. So stop telling me that you're really a horse kind of a guy and not a donkey kind of a guy, because we're together. We have a relationship. It's odd. How do we know this to be true? A connection back to Sefer Melachim, the famous story with Avishag Shunamis. What's fascinating about this link is that the psukim there say that he didn't sleep with her. But obviously the Gemara here seems to imply some link between Vatihilo Sochenes and Hahaskein Hiskanti. I don't know the answer to that. Rashi even agrees that she's mechamemes. That's what the pasuk says. Yeah. I didn't look into that, but and there is an intimacy there of sorts. He's using her body heat for warmth, but that's just not what happened. That he didn't sleep with her there. At least that's what the psukim seem to say, and the Rishonim support that as well over there. Elamai v'yodea das elyon. Okay, look. Obviously, he didn't know the das of his own donkey, so he certainly doesn't know das of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. But what does the pasuk mean? The pasuk says v'yodea das elyon in Bamidbar Chav Daled, top line of the page. So then, what does it mean? So the Gemara says v'yodea das elyon shahaya yodea lechavein osa sha'a she'Kadosh Baruch Hu koes ba. He knew Bilam how to be mechavein to the time that a Kadosh Baruch Hu was angry. Hainu de ka'amar lehu navi liYisrael. Imi zechar na ma yadz balak melech Moab u'ma ona oso Bilam ben be'ormina shitim v'ala Gilgal leman das tzidkos Hashem. My leman das tzidkos Hashem. What does that part of the pasuk mean? Amar lana Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael de'una kama tzedakos asisi imachem. Kadosh Baruch Hu says to the Jewish people, you have no idea how many nice things I've done for you. Shelo ka'asti kol osan hayamim b'mei Bilam harasha. Bilam knew how to tap into my moment of anger. But I didn't even let myself get angry, says the Kodesh Baruch Hu. She'ilmale ka'asti kol osan hayamim. For all of the days when Bilam was trying to nail the Jews, and he was trying to give them this curse, for all of those days, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have let his typical anger show, his daily anger, lo nishtair misonen shel Yisrael saridu palit, no one would have been left from the Jewish people. You've got a Navi, Bilam, who knows how to navigate the anger of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu's anger flares, Bilam taps in, the Jewish people, by definition, have to be gone. Hainu deka'amar le Bilam le Balak ma'ekov lo kavoel. I'm trying. I know what I'm doing. I know how to be mechavein to the roges of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but he's not getting angry. Ma'ekov lo kavoel. What am I supposed to do if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not doing his typical routine? Kel zo'ein b'chol yom. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets angry every day. V'kama za'amo rega. This is the Gemara in Brachos, I think. No, we have a very similar Gemara over there. Shenemar ki rega be'apo chaim be'ertzono. Ibaisema lechi mi ba b'chadrecha b'skor delasecha be'adecha chavit kimad rega ad ya'avor za'am. Just wait one moment until his anger passes. A pasuk in Yeshaya. Emas rasach. When does HaKadosh Baruch Hu get angry? We're halfway down, heading toward the bottom of the page. Betlas sho'e kamaisa. In the first 3 hours, ki chivra karbalta de tarnagola. When there's a part of the tarnagol that has that whitens a little bit, a feature on his face. Says the Gemara, kol shaita v'shaita na mechivra. There's always some white on his face, so it's on the tarnagol's face. Says the Gemara, no, kol shaita v'shaita isbe suriki sumki. There's always some red streaks. It's not all white. There are some red streaks. Ha'i shaita, but when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is angry, less be suriki sumki. So that could be what Bilam was doing. He was looking at the animals in the first 3 hours. When he would see that the red streaks went away and everything turned white on the tarnagol, he said, then he would chase in. Then again, he would do his navi, whatever he was doing, to curse the Jews. Hahu mina, there was a heretic. Dahaba b'shivavu said Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Dahaba komentzarle. There was a guy in the community, a heretic who was bugging Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, driving him crazy. Yom echad, one day, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was fed up with this guy. Nakat tarnagolta, ve'osar le bekare, and he tied it to the feet. Ve'osiv, and he sat there. And Amar kimata ushaita ilte. When I see that this part of the animal turns white, I'm instantly going to curse this heretic, and he'll drop dead. Kimata ushaita. The time comes, the animal's body part on his head turns white, but alas, he had fallen asleep. Namneim. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi couldn't curse him at that time. Omar, first of the very long lines on Kufhei Amud Aleph, Kufhei Amud Beis, excuse me. Omar Shma Mina Lav Orachara. He said, if I fell asleep, says Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, that means something's off, and that means that it is not orach ara. The pasuk says in Mishlei, "Kamanosh letzadik lo tov." You should not be punishing people. Afilu b'mini lo iboy le lememar hachi. Even with a heretic, this is not the way to do things. Tana mishmei de Rabbi Meir b'shah she'achama zorachas. When the sun is shining, v'hamalachim manichin kisrehen al roshein mishtachavin lechama, and the kings are placing their crowns on their heads, and they are davening, they're praying to the Chama, to the sun. Miyad koes. That is a time when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets angry. Vayakam Bilam baboka vayachavo asono. What does this pasuk come to teach us? Tana mishum Reb Shimon ben Elazar, ahava mivateles shura shel gedula. It ruins the general lines, or it ruins the rules of greatness. Or another famous line is that Ava is mekalkeles es ashura. That is what's happening in our Gemara. Where do we see that when one is lovesick, they do things that are ridiculous? Avraham was told that he had to go shecht his own kid. And what happened? Avraham baboker, and the pasuk says, Vayachvoshes chamoro. Now Avraham was a very wealthy man, and he had servants. There is no reason why he should have been the one to put the saddle on the animal, to get it all the food that it needed. No reason. But he was lovesick. It's an unbelievable thing. And that's why it's such a godless. When there are things that we don't want to do, we avoid doing them. Avraham loved the HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And even the thing that he was asked to do, which was unfathomable, right? Unfathomable. 20 lines ago, we just said that a father will never hate his son. And he didn't hate Yitzchak, but his actions were so oriented around the Kodesh Baruch Hu, it appeared as though he was excited to do the shechita. That's what it looked like. He got up early and he saddled all the animals. And sina mivateles shura shel gedula mibilam. That we learn that when there's anger, that anger also makes us not follow the straight and narrow path. He did the same in regards to the animal, that when he went to go curse the Jews, he had no problem getting out of bed before the crack of dawn, and he would get the animals ready. Okay, beautiful. Let's turn to a famous Gemara that's all over Shas. We've seen it a number of times together. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rab, La'olam ya'asok adam b'Torah u'v'mitzvah afilu shelo lishma. Really, a person should always work on Torah and mitzvos, even though they are not lishma. Shemitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. Because even though we may do it for the wrong reasons initially, but if we keep at it, then we'll start doing it for the right reasons at some point. And I think I've shared this with you before. I believe that this is found in the Nefesh HaChaim. I've not seen it inside. I'm pretty sure it's there. Is that the Nefesh HaChaim says it's not like Nebuch, you're doing it Shelo Lishma, hopefully you'll end up doing it Lishma. He says, no, this is the flow. You first must do things somewhat Shelo Lishma in order to get to. It's a higher darga. You're climbing stairs. You can only skip a couple stairs. You can't skip this stair. Part of what we do is to do things for the wrong reasons. We have to make a kinyan in order to get to that next level. Beautiful idea. Where do we know this from? Shebischar arba'im u'shtaim korbano shehikriv balak zacha v'yatzim mimenu rus. He did something shelo lishma, wasn't done for the right reasons, but in the end, what ended up happening? He had descendants that ended up being rus. Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Huna, Rus bito shel Eglon. Rus was the daughter of Eglon, ben beno shel Balak, the grandson of Balak, Melech Moav Haisa. That is her very difficult ancestry. Could you imagine the shidduch resume? Who's your dad? Eglon. Who's your grandfather? Balak. And she is the mother of the Davidic dynasty. Yeah, you got to be careful looking at the shidduch resumes. Did she wear a robe to the Friday night table? Omar le Rava le Rabba bar Morik. See, if the pasuk says Yitav Elokim es Shem Shlomo mishimcha vayigdal kiso mikisacha. The pasuk seems to say that Shlomo should be even greater than David, but that's really not such a nice thing to say. Orach ar lemeimar le lemalkahachi. To say that Shlomo should be better than David? Amarle, no, really me'ein ka'amarle, just that you should be like David. Shlomo should be like him, but not necessarily better. Di lo temachi, otherwise we'd have a problem with another pasuk. Tevorach minashim Yael, eshes chever hakeni, minashim ba'ol tevorach. Nashim ba'ol manin, who are the women in the tent. Sorry, Rivka Rachel v'leh. You want to say that she's supposed to be better? Yael is supposed to be better than those women? Orach ara lemeimar harche? No, it's not what it means. Ele me'ein ka'amar, al-chanami me'ein ka'amar. And let's just learn maybe a little bit more. Pliga de Rabbi Yossi bar Choni, de Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Choni, b'chol adam iskane, chutz mi b'no v'talmido. There's always going to be a little bit of jealousy. However, not with a son and not with a Talmud. If my children outshine me, I'm thrilled. If my Talmidim outshine me, I'm thrilled. If a stam peer outshines me, that hurts the ego, right? But your own, really, there should be no jealousy at all, but this is the way we're wired. But here, that's where the Gemara shows this difference. Beno, where do we see that it's true about a ben? That if a child outshines his father, that the father is thrilled. Says the Gemara, Mishlomo. We learned that from Shlomo. That's what the pasuk just said. V'talmido. Where do we know about a Talmud? Says the Gemara, Ibaisema b'hina pishnayim beruchacha Eli, a pasuk from Melachim Beis. Or when he puts his hands on him and he commanded him. It's a story, I believe, with is that with Moshe and Yehoshua? What's that pasuk? Vayismach es yadav Allah vayitzavehu. Rashi says in her margin, third of the way down. Af al gav de Kadosh Baruch Hu lo amar le ela v'samachta es yodcha alav chada azel ihu v'samach tarte. He put both hands on him. Who was that? Not sure. We'll have to look. I don't know. Okay, the pasuk says vayasem davar b'fi Bilam. Something was put in the mouth of Bilam. What does this mean? Rabbi Lazar Omer Malach. There was a malach that was put in his mouth, meaning that he was speaking in a certain way. Rabbi Yonasan Amar Chacha, that he put a hook in his mouth. Amar Rav Yochanan, Mibirchaso shel osa rasha talamed ma haya belibo. From the brachos that the Rasha said, that Bilam said, we were able to reverse engineer and find out what was in his heart. Bikesh Lomar, he wanted to say, Shilo Yehu Lahem Bate Kinesios Ubate Midrashos, that you shouldn't have any places of worship. I think we beat him on that one because we're still here. Because what did he end up saying? He ended up saying, Matovu Ohalecha Yaakov. He wanted to say Lotishra Shchina Alem, that the Jews should never have the Shchina on them. However, what did he end up saying in Mishkan Osecha Yisrael? He wanted to give the curse of Lo Tehei Malchusa Nimsheches, that there would be no continuity of the leadership. Says Gemara, Kinetalim Nitayu, should be planted like by a nachal, which means the roots are deep. Lo Yehei Lahem Zeisim Uchramim. Maybe he would give a curse that the Jews should have no olives and no vineyards. Kiganos Alai Nahar. No, you're going to have plenty of gardens. Lo Yehei Rechan Nodef. Maybe he was going to say you shouldn't have a beautiful odor to you. Says the Gemara, Ki Ahalim Nota Hashem. Maybe he wanted to curse of Lo Yehei Lahem Melachim Ba'alei Koma. You shouldn't have kings of stature. Then the pasuk says instead, Ka'arazim Alei Maim. They're going to have people who are like cedar trees. Maybe he would curse them with Lo Yehei Lahem Melech Ben Melech. There won't be one descendant after another of kings. Then the Gemara says, Yizal Maim Midolio, the water should flow from the pitcher. Maybe he would give the curse 5 lines from the bottom of Lo Tehei Malchusan Sholetes B'umos. The Gemara says, No, V'zara B'mayim Rabim, that their zara, their seed, will be able to influence many. Maybe the concern was Lo Tehei Oza Malchusan. Says the Gemara, V'yarme Agag Malchus, will be even greater than the Malchus of Agag. Lo Tehei Emas Malchusan. Perhaps they would say that there's no fear of the Malchus of the Jewish people. Says the Gemara, no, B'tinase Malchuso. And lastly for today, Amar Rabbi Abba Bar Kahana, Kulam Chazru Leklala, Chutz Mi Bate Knesios Mi Bate Midrashos. A lot of these klalas taka did happen over the course of time, with one exception, is that we've always had our Bate Knesios and Bate Midrashos. Shenemar Vayafoch Hashem Elokecha Lechaz HaKlala Livracha, Ki Ohev Hashem Elokecha. Klala below klalos. Some of the klalos will not be implemented. And the fact that we're all sitting here tonight in the Beis Medrash is a victory over the intended curses of Bilam. We'll stop right here, 3 lines from the bottom of the page. Mir Hashem will pick up again tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.